Xbox Game Pass continues to get better and better, and I actually made a top 25 Xbox Game Pass video about 5 or 6 months ago, but it has changed exponentially since that point with a lot of new and great content entering Game Pass. And because of that, I thought I would make an updated version of the top 25 best Xbox Game Pass games, so you can continue to play and discover new and great games. Now, unfortunately, I didn't get to put every game on the list that I wanted to, which speaks volumes on how great Xbox Game Pass truly is. For list purposes, I'm only focusing on new games released this generation, and I'm not going to include Halo, Gears of War, or Forza because we already know how excellent those games are. Those games aren't just some of the best games in Xbox Game Pass, but they're also some of the best games in the entire industry, so without a doubt, go check out those if you haven't already. And do keep in mind this is just an opinion, and yours may be different than mine. But if I don't mention your favorite game, that doesn't mean I didn't like it. In fact, I probably did like it, but please, let me know what your favorite games are too so others can discover it as well. With all that said, let's get right into the video. At number 25, I have Alien Isolation, and if you're a fan of the Alien franchise, I really think this may be a must-have as it's very faithful to the classic hit movies, and it even stands toe-to-toe with them. Alien Isolation really is a tale of two halves though, with much of the game giving you those Alien 1 vibes with the ominous cat-mouse-like game as you try to hide from the xenomorph alien. It can be pretty spooky too, so keep that in mind. But in the second half of the game, it does calm down a bit, focusing more on the androids, but I think as a whole package, this is one of the best horror games that released this generation. Night School Studio did it once again with another excellent game, first releasing Oxenfree and now Afterparty. Both are in Game Pass too, and I'd recommend both, but yes, Afterparty is yet another good point-and-click adventure game from them. It has a really good story about two teenagers who dies and wakes up in hell, but they however can escape if they can somehow beat Satan in a drinking game, which is much easier said than done. It can be funny at times while emotional in others, and if you like point-and-click adventure games with a strong narrative, Afterparty may be just for you. OPERENCIA is the exact reason that I love Xbox Game Pass so much, because if it wasn't for Game Pass, I likely would have never played OPERENCIA, and really that would have been a complete shame. OPERENCIA is an old-school turn-based RPG, but I think one of my favorite things about OPERENCIA is each of its unique worlds. You travel in kind of a grid-based pattern, and its puzzles are oftentimes very clever. This game was a real surprise to me, but I really did love this game from beginning to end. Fans of RPGs, do yourself a favor and go check out OPERENCIA. You may be as surprised as I was. And speaking of great RPGs, we have Pillars of Eternity, which I could have easily placed way higher on this list. This is actually one of the best RPGs made in years, but it however is an old school classic RPG with an isometric view, and I know that can be a little bit niche on consoles. Nonetheless, Pillars of Eternity has brilliant writing, a fun combat system, and a great world to explore. I know this genre may be niche on consoles, but you may want to give it a try because there really isn't much better on the market. Prey is the second sci-fi first-person shooter on this list, and that's because Prey is an excellent game. Really, it may be one of the more underappreciated games of this entire generation. First-person shooters aren't always known for having a great single player, but Prey is one of those games that can prove that assumption wrong, and one of the more interesting things about Prey is the enemy Mimic. This is one of the cooler enemies that I've seen in video games, as it can take on the shape of any object and lurk beyond every corner. Fans of sci-fi or first-person shooter games, I think you'll really enjoy Prey. I always talk about how Rime has similarities to Eco, but Rime is such a special game, and I really do mean that. It's unique in its own way and has a beautiful world to explore. The art style in Rime is truly breathtaking at times with the color palette that they use, but Rime is also an emotional adventure. It's interesting to see how it unfolds, and without any words, Rime can truly grab you. Like Eco though, you will be doing light platforming and prepare yourself to solve plenty of puzzles, and it's just an enjoyable game from start to finish. There has been a lot of really good AA games that's come out in the last few years. and VAMPYR is among the best in this category. It is made by the developers behind Life is Strange, but VAMPYR has taken a completely different direction here. It still does have a lot of focus on the narrative, which is solid overall, but its premise is very intriguing. It's about a doctor who is also a vampire, and if you piece the two together, this can lead to some very intriguing outcomes that the player will be able to choose for themselves. The combat is pretty solid too, and VAMPYR is definitely worth a try. I'm always interested in seeing people's first impressions of Untitled Goose Game. It doesn't really look like all that much, but then once you see others laughing and their enjoyment with this game, you realize that Untitled Goose Game is one of the best independent games of this generation. Quite simply, you play as a very, very bad goose that tries to be as annoying as it possibly can, playing all kinds of tricks on unsuspecting citizens. It's certainly one of the funniest games that you'll play with all the different hijinks, and I really can't recommend this one enough. Dead Cells is a roguelike Metroidvania, and I know that is an odd combination, and even sounds a little bit intimidating, but Dead Cells pulls it off with absolute perfection. Dead Cells gives you a simple goal: explore the island, discover its secrets, and reach the end. But when you die, you of course return back to the beginning like any other roguelike game. However, and this is why it's different, because even though you start back from the beginning, you will gain new abilities, and as you inch farther and farther, you start to be put in this addictive loop. It's a very fun game, and even though it's a little intimidating, I do encourage you to try it out for yourself. You may be surprised by how fun Dead Cells truly is. Kingdom Come: Deliverance is often ignored for its technical issues, but it really shouldn't be. Yes, Deliverance's performance may not be perfect, but it is one of the best RPGs to come out this generation. It has an excellent story, and you really play as a nobody. You're not a hero or some prodigy, you're just a regular guy. And this is why Deliverance is so unique, because that realism is both refreshing, and it's also different than what we're used to seeing in video games. This also bleeds into the combat, which is also very realistic. And I think RPG fans will really like this game if you can look past some of the technical issues. Koji Igarashi is best known for games like Castlevania, but when he left Konami to develop his own independent game, he made a game that is arguably just as good: Bloodstained. This was actually one of my surprise hits of 2019, and Bloodstained has a lot to offer. It has a good combat system, a great Metroidvania world to explore, and some of the best boss encounters I've seen in video games for quite a while. There's also a lot of abilities you can gain, and even though the story isn't the greatest, I think it may go down as one of the all-time great Metroidvania games. It really is that good. When Sea of Thieves first launched, it was viewed as a good game with little content to actually make it stand out. But even then, the core experience was always great and unique, as there really isn't a game that feels quite like Sea of Thieves. But after it launched, Rare continued to support it, and with each expansion the game got better and better. Now today, I would no longer say that Sea of Thieves is just a good core experience. It's a great game from top to bottom with plenty to offer. It is a shared world and the naval combat feels excellent, but it goes far beyond that with a good story mode, a PvP multiplayer arena, fishing, and much more. Sea of Thieves is one of the premier Game Pass releases with millions of active players, and for good reason. Insomniac Games has quickly become one of the best developers in the entire industry, but one of their better games that doesn't really get nearly enough exposure is Sunset Overdrive. It puts you into a colorful, apocalyptic world that defies the laws of physics. You can bounce on trees and zip across cable lines. Then there's the guns that has that Insomniac flair to it with all the creative weapons. It also has a lot of personality to it, and even when you defeat your enemies, they'll explode with a bold font, something like you would see in a comic book. If anything, Sunset Overdrive is flat out fun, and something I would recommend to almost anybody. Metal Gear Solid 5. Hideo Kojima's last Metal Gear Solid ever, and he definitely let you know it too. Metal Gear Solid 5 though is a great stealth third-person shooter with an excellent story. Visually, it's absolutely stunning, but one thing that is different from other Metal Gear games is its open world nature. And even though I'm not always a fan of making games open world, I do think Hideo Kojima pulled it off here. Stealth-based missions still feel great, and I think that the story will really keep people going. It's definitely got some plot twists here and there, and even if you don't love the ending, I think it's a great overall experience. When people ask me what the best puzzle games are, there is two that immediately stands out to me. There's Portal, and then there's Talos Principle. And it's no coincidence that Talos Principle is compared to Portal. Sure, its puzzles are completely different, but it's their uniqueness that makes them so special. Talos Principle, though, is especially deviant with some of its mind-breaking puzzles. I do encourage you to not look up the solutions online, though, because once you figure out a puzzle, you will feel like a genius. Talos Principle also has a good story with its philosophical storytelling. If you're looking for a good puzzle game, though, look no further than the Talos Principle. I'm not sure if there is a game that has surprised me more this generation than The Outer Wilds. This game truly is a masterpiece. It actually has a lot of similarities with Sea of Thieves, but in Outer Worlds it asks you to solve the mysteries of the universe and the alien species, the Nomai. It has you exploring several different planets with their own laws. On one planet you may be able to jump extremely high with your thrusters, while on others you are weighted down. Some planets are spooky with giant alien fish prepared to eat you, while others have terrifying typhoons circling the seabound planet. Outer Wilds is filled with puzzles, and I do stand by what I said. It is a masterpiece. Monster Hunter has always been really big in Japan, and actually it's one of the reasons that the PSP did so well when it released. But for the first time, I think we saw Monster Hunter World really explode worldwide. It definitely showed the rest of the world why it's so great and so addictive. It is a bit of a grind fest, but that doesn't stop Monster Hunter World being among the best of the best. Its combat is unique with different classes to play around with, and I think the monster designs, the animations, and behavior is truly excellent. It really engrosses you into the world. It's also a very content-heavy game, and that isn't even mentioning its huge expansion. When you first look at Ori and the Blind Forest, it's easy to be drawn in by its pure beauty. When we talk about games being art, I think Ori and the Blind Forest is a perfect example of this. But the thing is, it goes so far beyond just being artistic. This is a truly excellent game, and one of the all-time great Metroidvania games. I often like to refer to it as the Mario of Metroidvania games because of how good its platforming is. It truly shines in this area, and sure, you unlock several abilities and can backtrack to unreachable areas like any other Metroidvania, but you will be hard-pressed to find a Metroidvania game with better platforming than Ori and the Blind Forest. If Ori is the Mario of Metroidvania games, then Hollow Knight is the Dark Souls of Metroidvania games, thanks to its hard difficulty with the risk-reward currency, fantastic combat, and brilliant boss encounters. Chances are you've probably heard about this game at one point in time, and if for whatever reason you have yet to try it, there isn't a better time to jump in. There is a reason that this game has so much hype behind it, because it's not just one of the best games on Xbox Game Pass, but it's one of the best games, period. Rocket League is actually one of my most played games of the entire generation. On the surface, it doesn't look like much, but then when you actually play it, you'll soon realize what all the hype is about. The toy-like cars just feel so great as you boost and fly your way across the arena, trying to score or to defend. It's very much a sports game, but far more fun than any sports game at the same time. In fact, this game has a very high ceiling for skilled players. It's actually crazy seeing what some people can do playing this game competitively. If for whatever reason you haven't tried Rocket League out yet, do yourself a favor and go check it out. Tomb Raider is one of the most recognizable game franchises of all time, dating back to the 90s. Lara Croft has went through a bit of a reboot since that time though, but her newest trilogy may be some of the best yet. In these reboots, which are all on Xbox Game Pass, she takes some inspiration from the Uncharted franchise, which originally took inspiration from Tomb Raider. Funny how that works out, but in all honesty, Tomb Raider arguably does the cinematic experience just as well as Uncharted. The shooting mechanics feel really good. It's got that light platforming to it, puzzles, and amazing cinematic set pieces. I think all three of the Tomb Raider games are great too, and luckily you can play all three beginning to end. Capcom in the last few years has really come back to life. And with that, they have also revived some of their older franchises such as Devil May Cry 5. The thing is though, they didn't just bring it back, but rather they breathed fresh air into it. It is pure quality, and has some of the most fun hack and slash combat in games right now. I like its take on the genre though, as it almost feels like you're combining a fighting game with a beat 'em up game. It feels great and unique, and as an added bonus, it has fun characters and a good story. If you're just looking for a fun game to get lost in, then go check out Devil May Cry 5. The Outer Worlds is arguably the best RPG of this generation. What Obsidian did here could be considered a masterpiece. It's basically a mix between Fallout and Mass Effect, and brings the two together as you travel from planet to planet. And speaking of Fallout, keep in mind Fallout 4 is also on Game Pass as well, so you can easily swap the two games if you want. The Outer Worlds though is filled with great writing that will have you chuckling at the witty comments of both your character and reactions from the characters you meet in the world. And just like Fallout and Mass Effect, your decisions in the Outer World will impact the world around you. Not every decision is easy to make either, and when you reach the credits, you may still think on whether or not you made the right call. And it's these decisions that may have you playing it all over again for an entirely different outcome. I will also say that the combat is pretty solid too. It is a little bit on the easier side, but nonetheless, one of the best RPGs from this generation, hands down. I'm always blown away when I realize that a small independent team of just 20 people made Hellblade. What Ninja Theory did with Hellblade is such an amazing feature that rivals AAA games. The facial animations are probably some of the best I've seen in video games, and I do want to credit the actress Melina Jorgens here because she was phenomenal. Hellblade though is a linear game with an excellent cinematic story. It's such a deep story though, and something that will stick with you long after you roll the final credits. So if you like these cinematic story-driven games, Hellblade is an excellent choice. And first place goes to none other than The Witcher 3. The Witcher 3 is a true instant classic with a mesmerizing world, well-made characters, and an alluring story. And not only is the main story great, but its side missions are excellent as well, and that is such a rare thing for games. In most games I only care about the main quests, but in The Witcher 3, it's somehow different. It's just such a quality product in almost every way. Even in its combat, which some people will debate against, I do think feels really good and unique compared to other games. The Witcher 3 is not just one of the best Xbox Game Pass games, but it's one of the best games ever made. Anyways though, that's it for this video, and if I didn't mention some of your favorites, let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear some of your favorites as well. But if you liked the video, don't forget to hit that bell notification and subscribe button. Peace out.